I'm 132. In this tutorial, we'll be basically talking about rendering without rendering. And so typically when you render in Rhino, it's a pretty highly intensive process on your computer. And also depending on the settings that you set for your rendering output, it might take a really long time for your computer to first render all the objects that you might have in your file. And also, it just also might be a really highly intensive process on top of that still too. And so when we talk about rendering without rendering in this tutorial, we'll be talking about a reproduction of a drawing style by a firm called JPA, or Jones Partners Architects. And so this firm actually, we have a faculty here in Cal Poly that's actually connected to this firm, Doug Jackson, and he used to be a former principal of this firm, and that's a kind of fun fact that we also have about this tutorial too. And so in any case, when we talk about the JPA style representations, we're talking about these dramatic shadows that the firm usually has about the drawings that they create for the projects that they work on in their portfolio. And so specifically in this San Jose Repertory Theater, the drawings that they have is this black and white drawing of the building, but also it pops out from these pretty crisp black shadows that neatly shows the depth of all the items in these in this project. And so the structure of this tutorial overall is going to be how you can produce this in Rhino, and it's also going to follow a tutorial made by Christopher Carbajal, in which he used the default Arctic display and manipulated in a way that produces the JPA style drawings that we just showed you too. And so in his tutorial, he worked in Rhino 6, but because we usually work in Rhino 7 now, this tutorial is going to be geared towards the workflow that you might use for completing this JPA style representation in Rhino 7. And so we're just going to hop back into Rhino, and we're going to start by typing in document properties. And so, by the way, we're looking at this model in this tutorial, in this case, in the default Arctic view already. And so once we've typed in document properties, a panel is just going to pop up. And so we're just going to navigate to view at the very bottom. And so we're going to toggle down the toggle down menus, and I already have a JPA style display mode because I've already practiced this beforehand, but I'm just going to leave this for now. But in any case, Rhino comes with these several default display modes from wireframe all the way to ray traced. And because we want to manipulate Arctic and also preserve Arctic in case we want to use that display in the future, we're just going to copy this. And then we're just going to title this JPA shadows. And so we're going to begin by changing the background from solid color to transparent, right? And so whenever you change anything in document properties, in this case, we're changing things in display mode options, any change you make in the document properties should be followed up with the OK command to enable any change that you made in these settings, right? So I'm just going to press OK. And so recalling that this is already the Arctic display mode with the white background, you see this shadow in the horizon. And so since we changed the background to be transparent, you see that the entire background is already black, and there's no shadow in the horizon. And so this kind of is a double check for how we can know that the change that we made in the document properties is actually enabled and actually followed through in Rhino itself, right? And so we're just going to go back into document properties to continue manipulating the settings in our custom display mode. And so for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to change it to setting to shaded for now, because I know that my computer personally is not going to react very well to active changes in display modes specifically. So I'm just going to be switching between the shaded view and the document properties panel and also our custom display. But if your computer allows you to, you can feel free to continue working in the document properties and directly into the custom display mode, the JPA shadows display mode that we're working on right now. But in any case, I'm going to type back in document properties and it prompts you back into the JPA shadows that we're working with, right? And so we're then going to go into the shading settings and going to be changing things in there. And one thing that we're going to do is just going to change the color and material usage from custom material for all objects to single color for all objects. And we're going to increase the gloss from 0 to 2. And we're going to change the single object color to white. And this is just going to make the reflections brighter and also just glossier too. So once we finish changing this, we can head into the lighting scheme at the very bottom of this page. And we're going to change the lighting method to from ambient occlusion to scene lighting. And the ambient color is just going to be dark gray. And so what this means is that currently in the default Arctic view, everything is already like in a grayish tone, and the shadows are going to be black. But in this tutorial, we want our shadows to be dark gray, and the shadows, by changing the color, they're going to be by its name, dark gray. And so once we change these items, we're just going to also head into the objects toggle down menu. And then we're going to change the curves within the objects from the edge color usage, from use objects color to single color for all edges. And again, we're just going to change this to gray as well, dark gray. And then for the naked edge usage, we're also going to change this to use separate settings for all naked edges. And for the edge usage color, we're also going to change this for a single color as well. And we're going to keep this to black for now. And so once we change these items, we're going to navigate down to the shadows page. And then this is where we're going to change our shadows to become more crisp too, right? So first we're going to change this memory usage to the crisp shadow, the most crisp shadow that we can have. And then we're going to reduce the soft edge qualities of these shadows to almost none. And we're going to change the slider to almost the furthest left tick mark. And then for edge blurring, we're going to keep this at no blurring. And self-shadowing artifacts, we're just going to keep this towards the middle and towards the cleaner side. And for transparent objects, we're going to change it to an area towards never cast shadows. And so once we have this, we're going to enable all the changes that we made to OK. And we're just going to make sure that we have our lightings in the way that we want it to be set. So I'm going to type in light. And then I'm just going to make sure that the sun is toggled on and the skylight is toggled off. And so this is going to make sure that the sun is only present because it is the only thing that provides directional light, whereas skylight provides some sort of diffused light, and that doesn't create the crisp shadows that we want. So now that we have our light and our display mode set, we're just going to make sure with the JPA shadows, right? And so what you can see already immediately is that the shadows are extremely crisp and they are projected onto the pavilion too, right? And so if you wanted to change, let's say, the shadows, you can go into the sun setting here. And if you don't have the sun setting onto your panels on this right side, you can go to this right gearbox and just check sun, right? And that's when you're gonna find your sun properties panel. So we're just gonna go into sun and use this as a way to change the shadows that you might have in your model. So I'm gonna head into the shaded view for now because again, my computer doesn't really respond to active changes really well. So as we saw before, the shadows are projected onto a really top-down right side way. And so let's say I wanted to project the shadows in a left side way or a westernly manner in a sun setting that's at a lower altitude, right? And so I change it accordingly to so the sun goes in a more westerly way or directed at a westerly way, and at a lower altitude by changing the sun position here. And so I'd want to double check by going back to JPA shadows. And this again comports with what I wanted to change, right? The shadows are coming at a more westerly way, and it is at a lower angle because these shadows are projected in a longer way. And so one thing to note ultimately from making these JPA style representation is that it does not come with the Rhino default settings that are within the display modes, right? You should achieve this by changing any of the settings that you might have or that we went through in the display modes to get to this JPA property, or I guess JPA style. And also from the sun setting, they might want to change from, I guess, a morning or I guess a westerly or any kind of sun setting that you might want to have for your project. And ultimately, you'll come to productions that look like this some way, right? So you have, I guess, this black colored drawing with a white outline of the building, and also this gray drawing, and also this white drawing, right? And they all have intrinsically these different effects that you have. And in order to, I guess, export these views out, you just type in view capture to file, and you're gonna be prompted with a dialog of how you want to export these views to your final, I guess, representation of these, right? And so I hope this helps you in representing your Rhino models in specifically this JPA style, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.